Books versus movies. Ooh. David versus Goliath. North versus South. Which would you pick? Actually, I kind of like them both. Obviously, I like reading books. I like writing them, so of course I'm going to like reading them. And one of the things that you get to do is you get to form your own landscape. You get to form, the imagery of the different characters as you're reading them. You get to make them your own. And then you roll around to the movie version of whatever particular book. And that, believe it or not, despite the best intentions of most directors and producers, is really, really hit or miss. On the one hand, you've got Peter Jackson's versions of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, which, if he were any more faithful to any of those books, we would still be in the midst of the Fellowship of the Ring, because he did pay very close attention. Yes, he took liberties with some things, but for the most part, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd give him at least a 7, if not an 8, of staying faithful to the books. And then on the other hand, you've got some TV adaptations of Agatha Christie's novels. The one that comes to mind, first off, is the TV version of Dead Man's Folly, starring Peter Ustinov as Poirot and Jean Stapleton as Ariadne Oliver. That version had so little in common with the book that it was unbelievable. And I actually regret buying it on Netflix. I had remembered seeing it when it first came out, but I was like in high school or elementary school then, so I wasn't that much of a student of Agatha Christie's. I wasn't a writer other than the creative writing projects we had to do in English class, and so I didn't really pay attention and didn't care if I did. Now, kind of being in a different perspective, oh my God. I went through that, and that was about an hour's worth of my life I'm never getting back. That was absolutely horrible. But on the other hand, if it's done really good and there's at least some degree of faithfulness to the book and an actual representation of the book itself, 100% faithful to the manuscript, transferring over into movies, I don't think is possible. Obviously, The Lord of the Rings was really close. Another one that was really close is Gone with the Wind. I've never been able to sit through the entire version of Ben-Hur, and I've never read the book. So that one I couldn't really say. From what I understand, another one of my favorites, The Agony and the Ecstasy, which is also based on a book which I can't quite remember who wrote it, that dealt with Michelangelo and the painting of the Sistine Chapel. From what I understand, that was very faithful to the book. What I'm saying is, don't expect the movie version of whatever book you read to be something that's going to give you all the answers, that's going to take care of all the creating for you, take care of all the imagination, take care of all the stuff that your own brain should be doing when you read the book. Instead, understand how it's going to be giving you a new dimension of how you're going to interpret the story you're hearing, or in this case, seeing. I had a different idea of Aragon when I read the books than when I saw the movie. But I kind of thought that they did a really good job with that character. And all of the encounters with the elves and the architecture and the dwarves, I never would have thought of giving a dwarf a Scottish accent. I never thought about their nationality. I figured they would have a deep, rough, coarse vocabulary and voice and mannerisms and everything. But it's when the director realizes that the author has thrown a ball, so to speak, and it's up for him to catch it and throw it to the next person, treating it like a relay, which if you approach that, you'll understand that, there's going to be certain level of interpretation. And at first, I remember when I had my very first book done as an audiobook. Now, when I wrote it, I knew what the characters were supposed to sound like. I knew what they sounded like in my own head. I knew what the narrator was supposed to sound like. I knew how the inflections in their words were supposed to be. Now it's being read by somebody completely different. And it took me a while to understand how I felt about that. I mean, I've never been in the position where my books have been taken and made into movies, yet anyway. Hint, hint. And so I don't know how I would feel, but it was when I had to realize that my general theory about interpretation in a movie adaptation of a book had to apply to the same audio adaptation, because nobody was in my head when I was writing the book, when I was thinking it out. Nobody was listening to me or the voices of the characters as I was writing them. Anybody reading that is going to be interpreting them their way. And that's kind of what I'm supposed to get them to do. And on the one hand, you want to grab onto your writing, your characters, your storyline, and say, this is my baby. No, you have to do it this way. But on the other, this is what it's out there for somebody to read it, to interpret it, to relate to it, to share it, to help it grow. Because once they've done all that, that means they have an emotional attachment to those characters, to that book, and hopefully to that writer. So, yeah, movie adaptations can be pretty good, but nothing beats the original. And so, just thought of an incident where the movie was actually better than the book, and that was Forsyth's Odessophile. I had to read the book when I was in high school. It was okay, but I really liked the movie because they filled in a lot of spots that the author kind of just, brushed over, which kind of made the story seem a little disjointed. With the movie adaptation, they were able to put in a little bit more tension. They were able to make things, fill in the dead spot, so to speak. And so in that case, the movie came out better. For the most part, they don't always do that. So, yeah, I wouldn't say no to investing in a ticket and a box of popcorn to watch a good movie, any more than I would say no to investing in a few bucks and a latte for a good book.